looking at here is 136 composition with red, blue, and yellow, and this is by Pete Mondrian. Okay, 1930 oil on canvas. And Pete Mondrian was an interesting soul. Okay, he is one of the founders of the Dutch modern movement called De Stijl. It is recognized for the purity of his abstractions and methodological practice by which he arrived at them. Methodical practice by which he arrived at them. He radically simplified the elements of his paintings to reflect what he saw as the spiritual order underlying the visible world, creating a clear, universal aesthetic language with his canvases. So that is really one of the key points of Mondrian. I know you're going to look at his work and you're going to say, "Derm, what the heck? This is black lines and boxes in literally just basic colors." Okay, so we have primary colors: red, blue, and yellow. And then we have simplified lines. What Pete Mondrian did was he basically took something and simplified it down to its most basic core. So the basic simplification of each work of art is going to be, every work of art is going to be made up of lines, colors, and shapes. Those are some of the basic elements of art. And so what Mondrian did is he took things and he simplified them and simplified them and simplified it and kept going to get that down to its most simplified core. Okay? In his best known paintings from the 1920s, Mondrian reduced his shapes to lines and rectangles and his palette to fundamental basics, pushing past references to the outside world towards pure abstraction. So again, he would take something from the outside world and simplify it down to its basic core shapes and colors. His use of asymmetrical balance and simplified pictorial vocabulary were critical in the development of modern art. And his iconic abstract works remain influential in design and familiar in popular culture to this day. You can really, Mondrian has a lot of kind of in popular culture. You can see his work represented in a lot of different areas, especially in social media and advertising. A theorist and a writer, Mondrian believed that art reflected the underlying spirituality of nature. He simplified the subjects of his paintings down to the most basic elements in order to reveal the essence of the mystical energy in the balance of forces that governed nature and the universe. So that's going to be a really key point here. He's simplifying the subjects of his paintings down to the most basic element to reveal its essence of mystical energy in the balance of forces that governed nature and universe. You can tell he's definitely a theorist, a philosopher in what he's doing, because he's looking at much more deeply into art than just what he sees. Okay. Mondrian chose to distill his representations of the world to their basic vertical and horizontal elements, which represented the two essential opposing forces, the positive and the negative, the dynamic and the static, the masculine and the feminine. The dynamic balance of his compositions reflect what he saw as the universal balance of these forces. So he's always kind of balancing something in his piece. His singular vision for modern art is clearly demonstrated in the methodical progression of his artistic style from the traditional representation to complete abstraction. His paintings evolve in a logical manner and clearly convey the influence of various modern art movements such as Luminism, Impressionism, and most importantly, Cubism. So again, we can see how all of these different works of art up to this point are really feeding into each other and how they're developing. Okay. Mondrian and the artists of De Stijl advocated pure abstraction and a pared down palette in order to express a utopian ideal of universal harmony in all of the arts. By using basic forms and colors, Mondrian believed that his vision of modern art would transcend divisions in culture and become a new common language based on the pure primary colors, flatness of forms, and dynamic tension in his canvases. Mondrian's book on neoplasticism became one of the key documents of abstract art. In it, he detailed his vision of artistic expression in which plastic simply referred to the action of forms and colors on their surface of the canvas as a new method for representing modern reality. So again, you're looking at primary colors, flatness of form, and just that whole advocate of pure abstraction and a pared down palette. So these are some of Mondrian's other works of art, which you can see are a little bit more dynamic than the piece that in this set. Okay, so they're a little bit more busy. Okay, but there is still that simplified tension that you see within the pieces. If you look on the left, it always reminds me of like traffic, like cars and lights in its kind of grid-like pattern. This is how Mondrian got started. So when he began to paint, he started out with like trees, as you see in the upper left, that were very realistic, very, you can see his influence coming from the Impressionistic era. And then watch as you move from left to right with your eyes, how that tree becomes more abstract. And on the right-hand side, it's very reminiscent of George Braque and Pablo Picasso's later works. And then you have it even simplified more at the bottom left and then the bottom right. So you can definitely see how he his artwork evolved from painting kind of this realistic nature into painting something that was much more abstract in how he showed objects. So these are all pictures of trees, okay? So that's why I did this little series here, because this is all a representation of what a tree could be, okay? So it's kind of a nice example of Mondrian's movements and how he continued to simplify things down to their basic elements and basic core, okay? So before we get to the next piece, I do want to say that Mondrian, you can see a lot of his influences from Cubist art, but you can also see how he was influenced by just kind of the movements at the time. And you also have to remember that during this time period is post-World War I. There was a lot of questioning, a lot of confusion, a lot of change within the world. In the 1920s, you had a lot of changing worldviews and economical upheaval. And therefore, a lot of artists, like we've been looking at, are questioning what art is and what art can be, and how you can take art and just go deeper than just a representation of an object, but you can go deeper into the theory and the abstraction of what a work of art could be and what it really is as its basic essence and core.